So the other day I did my playoff predictions, and so today, real quick, I'm just going to talk about my awards choices, who I have for all the awards, and I've kind of talked about some of these already, and some of them might be obvious with some of my playoff picks, but I'm just going to go through them. I have some different opinions from some other people, so yeah. Starting off with MVP, the obvious one. I already talked about this, but I would have Giannis as my MVP. I made a whole video about it, but essentially to boil it down, I think that his two-way impact outweighs the other two guys' one-way impact. And I will say that since that video, my opinion has changed a little bit on where I rank Joel. I've kind of came like to the side of his case a little bit. Like in that video, I said that yeah, it's a three-man race, but I don't see why. I think it should be a two-man race between Jokic and Giannis. And after kind of looking at it a little more and realizing how Joel played most of the season without Harden, and he had to deal with the whole drama with Ben Simmons and all that, and how he kind of kept that team afloat. I do at least see that argument. I don't agree with it. I think they had, obviously you don't have Ben Simmons, that hurts them, but Jokic doesn't have his top two guys either. And I think if you were to choose Joel, it would be for narrative reasons, he had to deal with the whole Ben Simmons thing, but I don't think that's a good argument. It's definitely not an on-court thing, and I don't like to take off-court stuff into opinion when it comes to MVP. I think should be about what you do on the court. But I guess it doesn't matter because I would take Giannis anyways. So yeah. Defensive Player of the Year. This one might be a bit of a hot take, but I would actually go with Giannis for Defensive Player of the Year as well. Simply because nobody's really distanced themselves or asserted themselves as the Defensive Player of the Year, and Giannis has had an awesome defensive season. He's averaging 1.1 blocks and 1.1 steals, or something like that. It might be 1.4 blocks, 1.1 steals. The point is, he's having a really nice season defensively on both ends, and he's still the same great defensive player. The tape shows it. He's very switchable. He can guard all five positions, all that stuff. So yeah, I think Marcus Smart has a good case, but he's the best defensive guard in the league by a pretty big margin. And a lot of people say that he should get it because his team's defense is a lot better, especially compared to Giannis, who I think the Bucks are 12th right now in defense or something like that, or that's what they finished as. But you got to consider that he was playing alongside the Time Lord, who is an all-defensive guy. He was playing alongside Jason Tatum, who actually led the league in defensive win shares. And he was also playing alongside Al Horford, who had more defensive win shares than he did. Obviously, I don't think defensive win shares are this end-all, be-all stat. But the point is that he was really good on defense, and his team was really good on defense because it was some of the parts, right? Marcus Smart was a huge part in that, especially, being their best defensive guard. But, to say that Smart should get it because his team was so good, I think his team was so good because his team was so good, not just because he was good. Whereas Giannis, I think he did a lot to help his team get to where they were on defense, and I think his overall impact on defense makes him deserving of the award. So, yeah. Most improved player, I'd give it to Ja Morant. It's pretty much a three-way race for me between Darius Garland, Ja Morant, and Jordan Poole. But I think Jordan Poole, I want to see it from him. His numbers look the best when it goes improving. A lot of people are saying he went from a G leaguer and now he's one of the best players in the NBA. And so yeah, I guess when you think about it, like over the course of the year, but he came into the year pretty good. But I guess when you look at it like that, the thing is, at the end of last season, he was playing pretty good basketball, right? He was it wasn't like he was on the G League. He started last year on the G League, but it's not like over the off season he went from a G Leaguer to an All-Star or anything like that. He's not an All-Star. Keep that in mind too. And I think when you look at what Ja Morant has done, I think it just overdoes that. People are saying he went from being an All-Star to an All-Star, but I think that undersells it. I think he went from being a low-end fringe All-Star, if he was one, to being an MVP candidate, one of the best players in the league. And I think we saw his team improve tenfold for that reason. It's not all his improvement. His team has gotten better around him, but I think Ja's improvement has been one of the big surprises of the year this year. And, I think Garland, he also has a case for it, but I think Ja Morant just does what he did, but more valuable, right? He added 8 more points per game. He went down in assists a little bit, but he went up in rebounds. And a big thing is that his efficiency jumped a lot, which is really important. Whereas Garland, I think he just had more volume across the board, right? Whereas his efficiency only went up by 1 or 2%. Ja Morant's went up by 5 or 6%. So I would give it to him. I think he's had a really nice year. For Rookie of the Year, I'd go with Evan Mobley. I mean, kind of for the same reason I go with Giannis and MVP. I think 2A impact matters, and when it's between him and Scotty Barnes, I don't think Cade's played enough, and I think Cade's one of those guys that's just I value somebody that's a piece, like a pretty solid piece for a contender or a playoff team, as opposed to somebody who's a not so valuable or a really valuable piece for a not so good team. So for me, it's between Scotty Barnes and Evan Mobley, and Scotty Barnes is the better offensive player. He's averaging like 0.5 more points, and he has less rebounds too. And so, and I think when you look at it like that, like Mobley's not as good of a scorer, but it's very negligible, and Mobley's a better defender. So I think you just give it to Evan Mobley, like especially when you consider the whole year. Like a lot of people are saying what Scotty Barnes has done in the last couple months has been really valuable, and it has, but over the course of the whole year, it's been Evan Mobley. So I think he should probably get that award. For Sixth Man of the Year, no contest, it's Tyler Hero. I mean, for some reason, he's still coming off the bench. He's averaging like 21 a night doing that. Nobody really comes close to him in that aspect, so I'll move on. For Coach of the Year, Monty Williams. People shouldn't overthink this. He's the best coach in the league. I mean, you can make arguments for other guys, but especially for what he's done this year, he's been the best coach in the league, and I think you should just move on from there. So now for the All-NBA teams. First off, All-NBA first team. I have, when I thought about this, I thought, well, I got to choose a center, and I'll take Jokic over Embiid. And then the only other spots that I thought were guaranteed was I was going to give Giannis a forward spot, and I think Luka definitely deserves a guard spot. And then for the last guard spot, I ended up going with Steph Curry, which people might disagree with. And then for the last forward spot, I went with Jason Tatum. And to summarize those two up, I really wanted to put Kevin Durant over Jason Tatum. His numbers were better pretty much across the board this year, and he's way more efficient. But I think that, the extra 21 games that Jason Tatum played as opposed to Kevin Durant, I think is really important and should factor into that decision. I don't understand why people are putting Devin Booker over Steph Curry other than team record, which, I mean, as we go through these teams, there's going to be another Suns player. Like, the Suns have a lot of really good players. It's not just Devin Booker. I think anybody that watches the Suns would realize that. Whereas Steph Curry, obviously the Warriors have a lot of other good players, but his numbers are better. He's more efficient, and he played 4 less games than Devin Booker. Like, people are acting like he played like 38 games and Devin Booker played 68. No. Devin Booker played 68, Steph played 64. That's 4 games. That's like 120 minutes, I think, is the difference between the two of them. I'm not going to lose sleep over putting Steph Curry over Devin Booker when he's the more efficient player. His team is better on the court versus without, as opposed to Booker. Without Steph Curry, the Warriors are like 9-12, I think. Without Devin Booker, they're like, the Suns are like, I want to say like 8-4, something like that. Like, they're still really good without Booker. Not as good, obviously, but, they're still a good team. And without Steph, the Warriors are, they won a couple games at the end of the year, but, they're still not the same team without Steph Curry. We all saw that. Those are just some games they played against a lot of people's backups and whatnot. And, I mean, they can win games without Steph, but it's a lot more difficult. And plus, I mean, eye test, Steph's better than Devin Booker. Like, come on. I mean, he's Steph Curry. And Devin Booker's a really good player, but he's not quite Steph Curry yet. We'll see if he gets there in a couple of years, but yeah. You can hate me if you want to for that pick, but I don't care. I'll put Steph Curry over Devin Booker for right now. Speaking of which, for second team, obviously the first guard is going to be Devin Booker. And then I got John Morant as the second guard. I kind of wanted to go with Chris Paul, but, I mean, I couldn't really see the argument over John Morant with the season he's had this year. The forwards, I went with Kevin Durant. Again, wanted him on first team, but second team's fine, considering the amount of games he played. And then DeMar DeRozan. I feel like people are underrating DeMar DeRozan a little bit. Like, his team has kind of fallen off towards the end of the year, but, I mean, like, 28-6-6 is 28-6-6. His numbers are close to that if they're not that. Like, he's had a really good year, even if his team has kind of faltered as of late. They're still the 6th seed, and his team is still, I mean, he's still had really good numbers, so I think he's definitely deserving of second team. And then for center, Joel Embiid. Not much debate there. In a normal year, he'd be first team, but, whatever. And then for the third team, point guard Chris Paul. Again, pretty easy choice. He's the point guard of the best team in the league by a mile, at least in the regular season. Other guard is Trae Young, and not much debate there. I mean, you could have gone with like Donovan Mitchell or Zach LaVine would be the other two choices there, but Trae Young's the easy choice, in my opinion. He led the league in points and assists total, so yeah. And then the forward spots, I went with LeBron and Pascal Siakam. LeBron's a tricky one because his numbers alone would be an easy first team candidate. I mean, I think he averaged like 38 and 6 or something like that. Stupidly insane numbers considering how old he is, 37. But I mean, you also got to consider that his team was an 11 seed, right? And there have been a lot of guys that have compiled numbers while playing for not great teams. It's crazy that LeBron's doing it at age 37, but as far as like comparing it to other guys who have slightly worse numbers but play for much better teams, you know, you got to think like if they had worse teammates around them, they could potentially put up better numbers too. So I have LeBron at third team. You know, he could be first or second team if his team was better. Maybe he still would have the same numbers, but whatever. You know, he's going to be at third team for this year. Hopefully his team, or he can go somewhere else where they can figure it out. And then Siakam, I mean, especially down the stretch, Siakam was really good. Like he's one of the major reasons that they went from being like the 8th or 9th seed all the way up to the 5th seed. It's because he's played such great ball down the stretch. And then my center's Karl Anthony Towns. Not much debate there. You could have gone with Bam. The Cat has better numbers offensively, and Bam's a better defender, but he also missed a lot of games. I think he played like 56 games this year, so Cat's a pretty easy choice there. And then I did all defense teams. I didn't do all rookie teams because I don't care, really. I mean, yeah, I don't know enough about all the rookies. I didn't watch them all play. But for all defense teams, I filled that out. So first team, I went with the guards. I went with Marcus Smart. Pretty easy choice. And then Matisse Thybulle, who's actually had a really solid year defensively this year for the Sixers. For the forwards, I put Giannis, obviously. And then Mikal Bridges, who I just couldn't see the argument for leaving him off with how good of a defender he's been this year. He's just been like a really solid player for a really, really great team this year. So I think he deserves a first team spot. And then I put Bam as the center. And Bam's numbers aren't that great. He has like 1.4 steals and like 0.8 blocks, but what he does for that defense, how switchable he is, how good of a rim protector he is, he's just such a great defender. I think he deserves first team. A lot of people are giving him Defensive Player of the Year votes, so I guess that validates it. Then for second team, the guard, I went with Drew. He's been a great defender this year. And one thing with all defense teams is that they kind of like don't care as much about position. So in the past, at least, they haven't. So I didn't really care about position after this point. So my second forward was Draymond. He missed a lot of games this year, but I mean, if he wouldn't have missed any games, I'll be honest, he probably wins Defensive Player of the Year. That's how good of a year he had. He had like 1.3 steals, 1.3 blocks, something like that. And he's Draymond Green. Their defense is insane. It's mostly because of him. So I put him on the second team. Jaren Jackson, I think he led the league in blocks, or if not, he was second. He had a great year, and Memphis is really good defensively. Robert Williams, the Time Lord, again, like I mentioned, great defender, one of many on the Celtics. And then I had to throw Rudy in there, just because the stats look good. I mean, I know people don't like Rudy. They say that he shouldn't win any more defensive accolades, but I mean, he's an insane rim protector. Without him, the Jazz defense would probably crumble, so I went ahead and threw him on the second team. So yeah, those are who I think should win the awards. Let me know if you disagree. And yeah, thanks for watching.